Welcome back to the show. Today's topic, dating coaches, or as the what do they call them? The thumbnail will read, dating coaches are toxic AF. And well, let's just dive in, right? So before I go into um, my notes or what I wrote down in this, there is definitely, well, I don't want this to come across like I'm dissing anybody in particular or targeting, a few. This is in general dating coaches that are online, and not just dating coaches, like self-improvement people and life coaches. They go by many names. So this is all encompassing on those people. Now, is there a place for them in men's life, in self improvement, and definitely like dating and grooming and life advice? Yes, there's definitely a place for it. The part where I'm having a problem with is the blatant exploitation of men, and the sheer, you know, uh, no care. I want money, and again, I respect the hustle. I respect the fact that there's uh, men trying to get money, but the fact that they're doing it under the guise of helping men, um, when it's clearly not true, is super bothersome for me, because it's just feeding into the rising numbers that I'm trying to address in most of the podcasts that I've done, which is the suicide and depression rate among teenage men to older men in their well into their 60s and 70s. So basically, just men in general, how as we grow older, and in now more recent times, even earlier now, we're dealing with a huge part of our life, if not our entire life, basically in a state of depression. Whether you want to, chalk it up to Hollywood or, society, whatever kind of movements you want to, uh, kind of uh, attribute to it, it is what it is. But the broad point is that men deal with depression, and now the numbers are still going up. So when men, and you hear it all the time, men are driven, men are focused, men are problem solvers. So when we identify a problem in ourselves, given our vulnerabilities, then uh, we try to fix it. And in that fixing, we'll throw money at it, we'll throw our time at it, we'll throw effort into it, we'll do a ton of stuff once we identify what the problem is. The issue is now that many men know that there's a problem, so they're starting to go out and look for these answers. And since we're technology, and I always go back to technology, but it's so new, so we're still getting used to it. Our mind is still getting adapted to it. The same way that my mind has to adapt. I mean, it has adapted to the point where I grew up where I had to go physically to a library and get a book. Now I could sit in my couch or whatever, on the floor or wherever I want to be, Google something real quick, and within seconds I got my answer to whatever kind of question I have. So technology has definitely made everything quicker, but it's also made everything more confusing, because most of these life coaches and dating coaches, I'm sure, are coming from a good place initially. And even if it's not, even if it's about the hustle, like I'll get into later on, I respect it. I get men that have lived life, or feel that they have some kind of knowledge and experience to try to share that, and in doing so, earn a little bit of profit in doing so, I don't. There's no harm in that. But again, it's the blatant out um, cash grabbing that's going on, and not only men. Now even women are getting into this, like, helping men out in relationship advice, and so it's like now we're getting bombarded by not only our own, when you go on YouTube or on Google, and try to find someone to try to help you find and figure out the problems against or past them, whether it's your fear of women, your lack of money or resources, the weird little idiosyncrasies that you have. So you start reaching out, and because, like I said earlier, the internet and just the way everything is so uh, fast and furious, the messages start getting, the people that you're listening to, the kind of quality of information that you're getting is not always coming from a a great source, right? So before, I know I've digressed a little bit, so that's a little, but I wanted to get that out there just because, again, it's not a personal attack on anyone. It's just the whole group in general, not just dating and relationship life coaches, personal development coaches, all these kind of people that are taking advantage of it's really men and women, but I focus on men, focusing their attention on men's wallets. And again, men want to be happy, men want to find answers, so they're driven and they'll throw a bunch of money at it. and and you see it every night, in some of these live streams and some of these men's shows. You see uh how much money is involved in these kind of shows. And again, I ain't mad at it. I'm not angry at the fact that they're being rewarded for, you know, the information that they're putting out. But again, before I just dive in, I just want to get into these numbers and just set the preface, I guess, or the pretense, whatever, or preface about what I'm about to talk about. So there's a lot of money to be made in relationships, and that's why I don't get mad or angry at the fact that these men are doing this, to or are getting compensated for helping men, giving dating advice, how to handle your money, how to be a better friend, how to get over your idiosyncrasies. I mean, there's other times in history in the past you would have to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for any kind of advice, and sometimes was the worst advice, right? So at least now you're getting like a survey almost of like 100, 1,000, or whatever, 10,000 people. Some of these things are very interesting as far as how just it's the uh, uh, what was that TV show where the Millionaire, where they had the lifelines and stuff. So you take your percentages, and again, don't again. I'm not mad at the fact that they're getting they're compensated for putting information out there. But a lot of people, I think, are misinformed or don't know how much money is is being out there, and why I'm talking about coaches. So annually, the revenue of just dating is so it's like probably like 2.5 to 2.7 billion dollars. That's encompassing the whole thing of dating. And I'm probably being a little modest. It's probably up to three, but that industry is ridiculous, with online dating and image consulting and all that stuff, your car, your fashion, your deck. So all that stuff, with and then that's not even including like life coaching and stuff like that. Then we're talking about probably closer 3.5 billion. If you're throwing it all in, like as far as like every kind of like self improvement and all that stuff, it's bringing so much money. And again, I'm probably shortchanging it, but I'm just taking the latest study, which is only taking into account a few of those statistics, and even then, it's putting it into the solid $2.8 billion. So there's a lot of money to be had. And another statistic that I want to get into before we dive right into some of the notes that I wrote down, as far as like why, you know, dating and relationship and self development coaches um, are toxic AF, is like I said, we'll get into it, but um, one of the other reasons, or things that I want to put out there before we get into it, is that men are usually the ones that are spending more uh, on ways to date. You know, whether it be, you know, hiring a dating coach, hiring a personal coach, a fitness coach, hiring a, financial advisor, you know, buying programs. I mean, it's you could see them on, you know, like the Fivers. A lot of them are men, you know, so it's always like, you know, how to dress better, how to smell, all these, you know, just look at the how to department. You'll see a lot of men oriented, even though the one thing you think off the top is like, oh, it must be women. No, men are are the driving force, I guess, behind. And sorry, you hear paperwork. I have some notes right here, um, but for the most part, like I said, that these dating gurus know this. They know there's money to be had, and they know that the men are using Tinder more than women. They know that men are trying to buy clothes and figure out how they could attract, you know, the sexiest mate, and these dating coaches know that. So I rambled on as far as like, you know, the reason of this podcast or this episode. So again, let's dive right in. So why do I think dating coaches are toxic, you know, AF? Now, it's not all of them. It's just the ones that try to exploit it. So I think every man listening to this or not has experienced divorce, separation, a heartache. You know, you've been fired, if you know, or some kind of disappointment where, you know, it's caused a severe wound. And everyone knows, we could speak semantics as to, oh, what kind of, you know, it, you know, when it hits you, where if you're alone you might even cry with, you know, with no one seeing. It's those kind of where it hits you right in the gut. So before the internet, if you want to use that as a divider, men didn't talk. That was the joke. Men don't talk. Men hold their feelings. Men, you know, aren't open and don't communicate and blah 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 blah. That was before. That was the normal. That was the joke. That was just the way it was, right? So we, you know, and it became like a, like I said, like this funny thing that pop culture kind of gravitated and just made men, man, we have to be stoic, we have to be, you know, kind of this one-sided, you know, non-feeling entity that society was training us to be. So for the most part back then, you had to kind of deal with your feelings and get past them, or just push them down, right? Like the jokes is, or you shove them down and you don't feel no more. You just don't feel nothing. No feels, no feels, no feels. But that's what it did, you know. And a lot of therapists would look at that as being very unhealthy, right? Because you're not communicating. Well, let's fast forward to present. You know, let's fast forward to today. Now we have the internet. Now you have places like comment sections, Reddit, you know, 4chan, all these other little, you know, places where people gather. And in this instance, you have these echo chambers, like some of these dating and relationship advice and self betterment, and, you know, all these things about uh, helping men. Um, they create these echo chambers of in some instances, you know, the depraving or depriving, or not depriving, but just talking down to women, or women are the in dating and relationships. Like women are the answer, they are the problem. Oh no, feminism is the problem. Oh, society is the problem. And you have these echo chambers that just keep on saying yeah, 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 and it keeps men stuck the same way, you know, an addiction will. You don't get out of it. You just kind of keep on going, and then once that feels good, right? Because you're releasing some anger, you're releasing that hurt in what you deem is a positive way, even though it's a negative way. Now, again, the science is fairly new, but it's coming out that that kind of action, and then again, I'm focusing on the man, but there's definitely the same thing happening in the other side. But there's new evidence showing that this kind of discord is actually more harmful than helpful, because again, call it barbaric or call it what it was back then, but men, when they felt this intensive pain or whatever disappointment, they had to swallow it. But in doing that, they had to have dealt with it. They said it was like a double-edged sword. Yeah, you had to shove it down, but you had to deal with it. You had to at least face it to be able to shove it down. Where now you don't. You don't have to face it. You just have to find people that validate your point of view, whether it be that the man's holding you down, or whether you are, because of poverty that we can't get out, or whatever it is that you start, getting, anyways, getting, you just start making excuses for for them. But anyways, back on, so back then it just gave guys a way to just dealing with it, and it started, like I was saying, the science is looking at the way we're doing it now as being more harmful, um, to men. So again, just like everything, with such pain comes, men that, for the most part, I think they mean well. These coaches and relationship coaches and gurus, I think they mean well. But in that, no one's dumb. Like, there's no greedier, species than human. Lions don't care about money, or they care about food, and that's the way they're kind of, wired. But for sadly, men get gold fever. They get, consumed by monetary, compensation. And again, I don't blame them, but men know that, because we know the pain that they are. And again, they might be coming from a great place. Oh, I've been cheated on, or I've been hurt, or I've been screwed over financially. I went through these. And again, I'm not saying that there isn't great examples and stuff to be learned, but it's when they take advantage of men, because they know that men are hurt. They're looking for answers, and because this is brand new, they're just using, men, and the fears that we have, the insecurities that we have against us, and package it all up and saying, this advice and this counseling, I'm going to give you the hacks and the tactics, or you have to be this kind of mindset, you have to be this kind of way, to do it. But I think I've said it more than once. Humans are so individualized that anytime you hear like, oh, you have to be this kind of way, or this kind of do this and that, and they're pretty specific, they're probably lying to you, because everything is so. If you knew I know people like, and some of these, dating coaches and self development coaches and life coaches and all that stuff. They like to use numbers, and I do too. I'm such a numbers guy. But they don't, like everyone. They just use numbers to prove their point. Where if you added every variable, it'll be so. That's why some say, "Oh, no one really has the answer," and that's the truth. No one really has the answer, because it's you. There's things that can improve stuff. There's things you could do that'll make it better. There's some things that can improve chances, where you can set yourself for financial success, whether saving and investing. If you change, wear better pants, or wear good feeding this, or wearing some cologne. All that stuff is something that is, common sense, I guess. It should be common sense, but it's packaged in all these, like, oh, do this, do that, and then they add this crazy ticket of, like, oh, 69.99. And you're when you see these packages or something, you're like, oh my god, this is like common sense package in these, like I said, counselings, or phone advices, or tactics. And it's easily, if you have a following of 100,000 people, and you only get 10% of those people to buy your book at just a cheap market price of 29.99, which I don't have a problem with that price, by the way. But let's just say 29.99. You do the math; it's a pretty fucking penny, and it puts you right up there in the, like, top 10% of earners in that year, just because of the fact that you got 10,000 people to buy your book at, like, 29.99. So that stuff adds up. And again, that price, I think, would be fair for any kind. I mean, you see books sometimes for like 34 and they're garbage. So I'm like, $30, okay, fine, for generic advice, cool. There's no such thing as, like, oh, my advice is better than all advice, because no one knows what you like. No one knows what you're going after. No one knows what would make you happy monetarily. No one knows what kind of relationships you want, but you have to be you. And these guys know it. All these coaches know that you're lost, you're confused, so they're taking advantage of it, and they're charging you all for a phone consultation. You're gonna pay me these prices and these prices. Oh, it's because my time is valuable, and you have to pay me. So they create themselves to be these kind of gurus, like, follow my way and follow no. And then you hear it all the time. And again, this is not about bashing, but contradictions. Look at the dating coaches, relationship coaches, how they turn on each other, how they're trying to outshine each other. And then if you do find some that agree, it's like these little cliques, like they were in high school, because they're preaching the same message, because they're getting some of the same support monetarily, like donations and stuff like that. Because again, men are looking for the answers, even though they want to claim all the, we're gonna be alpha males and simp energy and all this stuff. Whatever, call it whatever. It's negative energy, and this negative vision and negative energy is confusion. Men are confused, and they have expendable income, and they're throwing it at these guys. And again, I'm not mad at them, because if people are dumb enough to throw money like that, it becomes at some point an individual decision. But preaching some freaking morals and standards, and men want to talk about helping men, but I see more men, especially men that are on platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and stuff, just taking advantage of men and throwing some kind of generic message out there, or misleading, message, throwing facts and figures that skew to the message that you want, and encourage some kind of negative tone to females, or corporate America, or whatever it is, because you can't gain weight, or because you can't gain muscle, or because you can't gain, it's just this kind of, just this way of thinking that needs to just, So, like I said before, I don't mind the hustle, but the part where I get upset, and where I feel that it needs to be talked, is when you don't see any change in men. You don't see the numbers trending opposite, or downward, on depression, on suicide rate. I said that in the beginning. That's the part where I feel, if I would start seeing those numbers trending, the other way down, because men are starting to figure it out, and it's a correlation with the the information that's out there in the general public, and that men are adapting and using and being successful, it would be reflective on those rates. But it's not. It just keeps on going up higher and higher, and it's still trending to be even higher and higher every single year. So that is where it's alarming. That's where you know you're being had. That's where you know you're just wasting your money because it's not creating any change. And you'll hear the thing, oh, I'm only one man. I'm only one man. Yo, you're not that naive when you don't think if you're a YouTube creator and you're doing, to help men. Same thing. I mean, my show was here is called Modern Male Podcast. I'm trying to put the message or try to help men, by any means that I can, So again, I'm not, again, I'm not knocking the hustle, but when some of these creators, like I said, are putting out there and putting out generic information just to be able to make a buck, just to be able to, gain a following, just because they were heartbroken. They've been lied to. We've been cheated on. We've been, through life. We've experienced life, and we want to share our experience. Again, I'm not against uh, any of that, but again, the numbers aren't showing any correlation with that message, and somehow affecting men's depression and men's suicide rate. Men are angrier than ever. Women are angrier than ever. So why are they becoming, angrier? Is because I think both sides are getting horrible advice. Women getting they getting the bag and all this kind of stuff, and men, oh, every girl cheats and treat them this way, and oh, don't worry about it in the corporate world, dog eat dog, and run over people and stuff like that, and oh, in fitness, cheat your way, use steroids or use these kind of supplements and inject yourself with this if you want this perfect body and all this stuff. And it's like everyone's looking for all these cheat codes when some of the times most of the times there is no damn cheat codes. It's just randomness. I mean, some of the statistics on success rates on, online dating, if you just changed your eating habit or worked out a little bit harder, if you just cancel some subscriptions, you change your spending habits, all these things that should just be common sense, logical, basic kind of things, is where men get angry with these gurus when they find out that, oh, that's all they're preaching. Oh, save your habits, dress a little better, keep your options open, go out in life. This is all generic stuff because again, the only, and maybe it's not so generic because with the invention of the PS, PlayStations and the Xboxes and the YouTubes and all this stuff that we get now, the Netflix and the Disney Pluses and the phones and all that stuff, we're probably more wired into our technology than ever before. But this wasn't so uncommon 15, 20 years ago. Let's just go 10 years ago, 2010. It wasn't that long ago. So all it's telling me, like I've said before, is this knowledge gap that we have in society for both men and women. But men are taking advantage of men and leading to the depression and confusion of men, and then angry, and then they get mad, and you see them when they're on their channels. Oh, don't question my dating. You didn't apply it right, or this and this and that. And then they go into the randomness. Then they want to go in there and throw all, it's all individualized. Where that's what I'm trying to get at. This where these coaches will tell you anything just to get you on their side, because then once they get you on their side, they're gonna try to upsell you. Like, again, I ain't mad at it, but that's what they're trying to do for some generic information, for generic, generic information. I was trying to make it, put it in a more technical term, but as just basic as knowledge. And men need to just go back to just, I was gonna say focusing on them, but trusting your gut, because you could listen to every love and finance guru and self betterment guru, but only you know what you want to do. Only you know how you want to live your life. Am I condoning an unhealthy lifestyle or unhealthy relationships or unhealthy financial practices? Nope. But at the end of the day, this is your life. This is your one and only life. So why not do it doing what your gut tells you? It's great to listen to advice, but don't throw your money at something that you yourself, you know, maybe you don't know. Maybe maybe you needed to spend $1,000 for someone to tell you to just focus on yourself, and maybe the baggy pants that you were wearing don't fit. Maybe you needed someone to, you needed to spend 5 grand on an image consulting, to be able to feel better, than yourself. And if there's correlation within causation, then you know what? Call me fucking stupid and silly, I guess, because I just don't think that's, the price tag is worth it. I think, self esteem among men has to be a focus of every man, and not take it into, or it's a feminine thing, because just whether it's, being okay in your career, being okay in your relationship, being okay with the way you look, that's gonna just add to the overall happiness in men. And I think that is when it, those numbers that are concerning, that are trending upward, will start trending downward, because we're actually establishing a way that men don't need validation from money, from women, from society, but they're striving to become better just because that is what men do. That's what society does. That's what moves us forward, is trusting our guts, going, what's going to feel right for us, because what's right for me is not the same thing that's right for Carlos, right for John, right for Matthew, and right for freaking, whatever. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself the question and say, hey, where am I lacking? What do I want? What do I need? And move from there. Again, I'm not saying don't listen to these, betterment coaches and life coaches. There's the place, there's a reason, I they spotlight certain things, and for sure as hell they do help certain people, but don't get taken for a ride for a generic message that, again, you could go from one channel to another and hear the same message. It's a generic message, but at the end of the day, they're entrepreneurs themselves. They're trying to get money themselves, and I see it more and more in the comments and all this stuff. Get people getting angry after, like I said, when they find out that it's basic as knowledge, and then you get mad because you're like, oh my god, I got had. I just spent like 300 or X amount of money on this stuff you feel had, and then you just go in there and you start hating, and then you start going back into this echo chamber, and then you enter another toxic kind of maneuver, and that's what we want to get away from. Men, moving away from a sense of acting in a reactionary way, and take more of a let's take a proactive approach to this stuff. And sure, heartbreak, loss of job, and all that stuff will lead us into path to try to better ourselves. But 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we just guess what? We just had to take the gut punch, deal with it, and then move on from it. The numbers of suicide were a lot lower than what they are now. The depression rate was a lot lower than what it is now. And I think it's because we didn't cover it up with, all this stuff that made us feel good. Sometimes we're just pieces of shit. Sometimes we just have a gambling problem. Sometimes we have a substance abuse. Sometimes we want to date a girl that's out of our league, that uses us for our money and dries us up. Sometimes, anything happens. Sometimes we eat too many donuts and lose the six pack and gain, 300 pounds. Back in the days, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we were like, damn, I'm a fat slob. I got to get in shape. Damn, I'm a gambling idiot. I need to save my fucking money. I got to get my life together. I got to stop drinking. Now you get in groups and that's like, no, what, drinking isn't bad. You just got to tone it down a little bit. It's like you just want to find, people that agree with your point of view. And that's what these, so quote unquote dating coaches, relationship and self betterment and the advice that they give and all that stuff, it's generic. And, so I said there, when I say dating coaches and are toxic AF is because they're just not because they're again, are some of them coming from a good place? Yes, but not most of them. Most of them are just regurgitating information and just making this this echo chamber that is leading to a discussion that I'm seeing on social media. This clash of the sexes, if you want to call it, because of the fact that the wrong messengers are passing on these messages from both sides, and it's just creating this black hole now of dumbassery that's the self betterment and relationship industry, and it's just projected to get even more lucrative, more as we go along. So I don't see this stopping, but I'm hoping that the voice of reasons get louder and louder and louder. Where it's great. Let's help each other out, and yes, let's make some money out of it. But let's not be greedy and stupid and start like using men as the same thing that we're arguing against is the same thing that some of these quote unquote male coaches or men influencers are doing, and it's kind of ridiculous, and kind of I think counterproductive to what they're trying to do. And at the end of the day, you see more of them get swallowed up in their own wave, and that's unfortunate. I think a lot of these men and some women have a great platform to push the male agenda, if you want to call it that, forward in a healthy way, but they choose to do it in a form that they deem healthy, but in a scummy way where they're, hey, drop, donate, and I get it, donate and all that stuff. Cool, support is all great, but some of this stuff where they're gouging men for their money and giving out generic information, like I said, in romance, love, dating, relationship, marriages, financing, self betterment, working out with people. You could achieve this in 2 years, knowing damn well you're using steroids, and you make men buy a bunch of supplements and vitamins and all this stuff, and just a waste of money. Again, I know I focused a lot on the dating and relationship, but it's these same tactics in each one of these, whether it be financing, that where people, oh yeah, don't worry, we could invest in this, invest in that, and just only because you want to make your quota, and because this person has a bunch of money and he wants to invest it, and you're just gonna get a fat ass bonus, and that's all you care. You don't really care about what he, where he's gonna invest. And you see more and more about this. Oh, buy my book about investment, knowing your investment techniques are nothing but just reworded from like Warren Buffett or something like that, or some kind of generic shit that you Googled and try to repackage it a little bit different. That's what it's the scummy way. You might mean well, you might believe in your self ego, narcissistic mind that you have the greatest knowledge in the world, and that's fine for you to do so. But don't do it in a scummy way. Don't do it in a way that you're counterproductive to the same, men that you're trying to help, and then start, gouging information. If you want to be an echo chamber in a progressive movement towards the self betterment of men, I will champion that till the cows come home. But I'm not gonna sit here and just watch men after men, and now women coming up and doing this generic as information, this bad information that they're giving, young men, old men, just men, in period. Now, not including the women's advice that they're getting. We're not even getting into that. We're just focusing on the men and that horrible advice that they're getting. And then again, don't take my word for it. Just go in and look at some of these YouTube channels. Take a look at some of the engagement, the donations that's going on, some of their courses, and just look at the prices and tell me if that's justified. At any point, if that's justified, and you'll hear it. Oh, look at these guys! I saved them so much money. No, 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 no. You're just using randomness and then justifying that. See, it happened in this one. It was worth it to him, and so it's worth it to you. It's not the way it works, and they know that. But of course, they're not gonna. Again, I don't knock the hustle, because that's not a good marketing scheme to just be like, "Whoa, fool." But the fact that they know it and they're using it in a scummy way is the part that needs to stop. because it's just going to defeat us. It's just keeping us in the same thing. Because then when these men get disenfranchised because your information was bullshit, because you fell, because X factor didn't happen, all this stuff, all it does is just it throws all that we'll call them fish that you caught with your message. And when your message is bullshit or doesn't work, or enough people call you out on it, all those fishes just get thrown back into the ocean, and nothing gets stuck. And that's how we lose a decade or two or three in meaningless, you know, jarble and talking, where nothing gets accomplished, just two sides yelling at each other. So trust your gut. At the end of the day, use some better judgment. Again, this is not to diss anything or no hustle, but I'm tired of seeing men just being scammed of money, and then under the guise of information, and I'm doing this and this is my hustle. And I get it. Everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs to do. This has been around and it's going to continue. People using each other. But my concern is the suicide rate and depression among men. And clearly, none of this message has been going on now for 5-6 years now. Heavy, strong. And I'm seeing the numbers in depression and suicide just going up higher and higher every year. So obviously that there's disconnect. The message is not causing to men becoming more happier, becoming more satisfied. So again, trust your gut, use your best judgment, go out, find that information, but just don't let that desperation and that fear turn into you emptying your wallet, emptying your soul, emptying who you are, and then losing yourself, and then throwing you, when it ultimately fails, throwing you into a spiral of depression that will lead to something tragic. So I hope I made you guys think. I hope you guys like the video. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great night.